Carlos Icy on the road to recovery, presented by Hoag Orthopedic Institute. Always happy to be joined by Dr. Alan Beyer. Dr. B, we've got a mean one right now. The Lakers' amazing month of March came to a screeching halt in the month of April, just turning in the calendar. And now you got season-ending injuries, not just for Luka Doncic, but for Austin Reaves as well. Let's get into Luka first, Doc. Well, actually, first things first. How are you, Doc?
I'm good, all good. Got back from a lovely little trip up to Pebble Beach for my 75th birthday last week. That was kind of nice. We had Orange County weather up in Pebble Beach, so can't complain about that.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. It's always wonderful to visit the what I think is maybe the prettiest golf course in America. And it was a great couple of days away.
That's a
Good to be
perfect
back
way.
though.
Great way to ring in 75. Wow, that's amazing. From 75 to 77, that's Luka Doncic's number. Luka Doncic diagnosed with a grade 2 hamstring strain. Before we talk about the updated news about the treatment for Luka, let's talk about the injury first of all. It happened in a blowout game against the OKC Thunder. Now, JJ Redick even taking some criticism for placing or for continuing to play Luka in the fourth quarter in the blowout, and instead him getting hurt and him falling to the ground in pain, holding his hamstring. Doc, when you look at that in that injury, what did you see with, especially with Doncic grabbing his hamstring?
Well, like we've talked about before, we've seen a large number of these hamstring and calf injuries, one above the knee, one below the knee, obviously, in NBA and NFL players. We've talked about it being a result of the fact that they've gotten so strong that they sometimes exceed what their bodies can take with certain explosive moves, especially when a muscle is fatigued. I felt really bad about this one because I almost felt like Karnak the Magnificent. 2 weeks ago on my radio show, I said that the Lakers need to rest their players for the rest of the season. They were firmly ensconced in third place. They're not going to catch the two teams that are ahead of them, San Antonio and Oklahoma City Thunder. So, what you do in your remaining 10 games means so little. It's not going to change your seeding likely. And I think that they made a big error in terms of managing minutes of their superstars in these last 10 games that were essentially meaningless in terms of what was going to happen in the playoffs. So I hate to throw him under the bus, but I think JJ Redick might deserve some of the criticism he's getting for having Luka in there in the fourth quarter on a game that was out of reach, and they're not going to catch OKC. So why bother?
Yeah, I think JJ Redick couldn't help but to think of the game overall as a test for the streaking Lakers. But yes, when it came to what the score was at that point in the game, that late, yeah, I think there are some regrets. But hindsight is 2020. One loss since being that the loss against the Dallas Mavericks yesterday, and now they find themselves tied in the standings with the tiebreaker advantage over the Denver Nuggets. And I think a lot of us are already thinking that the Lakers could find themselves on the downside to the fifth seed. But we'll see. And we'll see if now the LeBron James led once again Lakers can continue to hold.
Well, like he's got so many minutes left in the tank too. We talked about that before the season even started. I feel sorry for LeBron. Plus, he's getting a lot of stuff he doesn't deserve in terms of his comments about Memphis, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, so many fans having their panties in a bunch over city comments. Doc, I mean that's another thing. Do you have treatment for sensitive ears?
Oh, yeah, just get older and you'll get deafer. That's all there is to it.
Well, going back to the bad news with Luka Doncic, he's now out for the rest of the regular season at least. Unless. So, the update in the news came out from Shams Charania yesterday that uh, Luka Doncic is on his way to Europe, and we found out today Spain, more exact, for an alternative treatment, a more aggressive treatment, in order for him to return as soon as possible. I mean, I can't help him but to see how the Lakers played yesterday against the Mavericks, that he wants to be back on the court and help his team out. Doc, why is he going to Europe? What is it that Europe has that we in the United States don't have?
Well, I'm probably guessing here a little bit, but typically aggressive treatment for a hamstring injury like this to get a player back a little sooner would involve probably a PRP injection to try to get some increased blood flow and decrease inflammation and a little bit more rapid healing. PRP is clearly available in the United States. We've been doing it for years. That said, it was available first in Europe, and they're allowed to do a lot of things to their PRP processing. You take the blood from the patient and then spin it down and get the platelet-rich layer and then re-inject that. In Europe, they're allowed to heat the blood after they've been passed it through the various filters and everything, and
And
before
why
they
is that not
re-inject it.
allowed in the United States?
The FDA has not approved that. Heating of blood in this country is a big, big no-no of any kind. And I think the FDA has very strict regulations about it, and that's not been approved in this country. So it's not done here. I don't know that Spain is anywhere ahead of Germany or any place else that are known to be centers where this research was being done. I'm presuming that it probably is. And that's likely the reason why he's choosing to be treated abroad.
Not to mention, also, there are some TMZ family issues that are being reported that he also has his kids and family there that he wouldn't mind seeing out in Europe. So I can see him spending some extra time there. But based off of your knowledge of the treatment in Europe and the possible PRP that he's undergoing, what goes into that treatment? What would be a timeline? Whereas right now, he's anticipated to miss at least 4 to 6 weeks, right?
I don't know that it will materially decrease that. At most, what you'd hope for is that you get a week or two more accelerated healing if the treatment is successful. I don't know if that's a week or two more than the traditional PRP type injections that we do here. Luka's a big boy. Puts a lot of strain on those hamstring muscles.
Despite losing the weight that he has in the last.
Yes, he has, but he's still a big boy. And I think that you're likely looking at a month at the earliest. And a month, what, another 2 weeks to go in the regular season, right?
1 week.
Well, the Lakers could be out of it by the time he's ready to come back,
Hmm.
especially if they drop down a seed or two and are facing tougher opponents than they would have faced had they stayed in the third slot. So we'll just have to see. I think a month is minimum.
You mentioned successful. How do you test the recovery when you're undergoing treatment like that? And I mean, I knock on wood, what could be the worst that could happen with undergoing this treatment and trying to force a more aggressive rehab?
Well, you could tear it further. If you come back and start running and fatiguing it and stretching it when it's not healed enough, you could tear it further. Um, Once in a while, you even see players having surgery for severe hamstring tears where the ends are far apart from each other. It's tough to sew muscle to muscle. I have to say that's not an easy predicament. Um, but that's the biggest threat is that you tear it further if you get him back in before it's healed too soon. The one thing they'll do on these guys is MRI scan them to death to see how the healing is progressing. But you can't tell an MRI scan is just a picture. It doesn't show you what's going on at the cellular level in terms of real healing. So I don't know how accurate that is in terms of predicting. You go more by measuring his strength and slowly dialing him up to the point of discomfort when he reaches a certain threshold of rehabilitation. But I saw the way he grabbed his thigh when this happened, and he was in a lot of pain. And I think this is at least a month.
When we look at the history of hamstring injuries, I know you talked about it earlier, we've been seeing it often. Chris Paul is an example that stands out to me. He was an elder age basketball player who his playoffs were affected by hamstring injuries, nagging hamstring injuries. Uh, what other examples are out there when it comes to recovering from a grade 2 hamstring strain? And I mean, I can't think of any examples of where European treatments like this, aggressive European treatments like this, have been prevalent before in the NBA, aside from Kobe's knee treatment.
You know, if the European methodology of treating this was so far superior to what we were doing here, everybody would have been going there for a long time. It's not as if he discovered some new institute of something that has something that nobody ever heard about before. So I think that a lot of it is social, family, being in a area that he's more comfortable, being away from all the paparazzi and everything else, not traveling with the team. That certainly gives him the opportunity to rest a little bit more. I don't know that it's really totally medically based.
Yes, and according to the last report, for him to be in Spain, a place where he's been very familiar starting his professional career playing for Real Madrid. Now, his career is also playing alongside his best friend. You think he could bring Austin Reaves along with him to Europe and get his grade 2 oblique strain treated?
If it works for him, you'd have to worry, does it, or wonder, would it work for Austin Reaves too? Austin Reaves is younger. Austin Reaves is a little bit more slight. Although the early reports that I read on Austin Reaves were that they weren't sure he was going to be ready to be back at all. Certainly not until the playoffs. So that was not an insignificant injury either.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it could be more of a longer timeline for Austin and the trouble that goes on with the strain, with his oblique strain. And you think about it, that's an injury in the core for somebody whose advantage on the court is being so shifty with the ball or in midair. I can't imagine. And we saw that when Austin got hurt in the first quarter of that same game against the OKC Thunder. He landed an awkward landing with the ball non-contact, and you could see he immediately grabbed his side. When you're thinking about that grade 2 oblique strain, what is that feeling like? Put us through the shoes of Austin Reaves and kind of describe that feeling of an oblique strain.
Well, the oblique muscles are responsible for turning your trunk. Okay. So think about it. In basketball, you're constantly turning to look to see where the other players are, to throw a pass, to jump up for a rebound. There's not a move that you make in basketball that's just straight on without some element of turning. So I think that this is a rather significant injury for a player like Austin Reaves. He's not just a big one who hangs out under the basket. He's up and down the court being shifty, and being shifty takes a lot of turning. So I think that this is not at all an insignificant injury.
We talked about Luka and upping the aggression towards treating it. What would be the best best techniques of rehabilitation for Austin Reeves' injury?
Well, as opposed to the hamstring, which is a rather well-defined muscle mass in the back of the thigh that you could do a PRP injection, the obliques are a little bit different. They're more superficial, they're flatter, they're not as thick, they're more spread out. And whenever you start injecting people in areas in the upper trunk, do I have to say that you take the risk of a pneumothorax, just like when you're dry needling someone? Does a certain Pittsburgh Steeler come to mind?
Yeah, we
So I
talked
think
about
that
TJ Watt on the road to recovery,
yeah,
Geno Smith on the road to recovery,
Tyrod Taylor. I mean,
Tyrod Taylor.
let's go on and on about that. It's not an area that's as easy to really infiltrate over a broad area with something like a needle with PRP in it that you're injecting.
Yeah, very sensitive subject there. But with Austin, is it rest? Is rest the best way to recover from an oblique injury?
Rest, Mother Nature, heals everything. Father Time kind of makes it go slower. Um, and also certain rehabilitative modalities. I mean, they'll do physical therapy modalities, maybe not dry needling, obviously, but ultrasound, ice contrast, heat contrast. There's all kinds of things that the physical therapist will do, electrical stimulation, just to get blood flow to the area, to get something like this to heal faster. So it's not as if he's just sitting and watching TV or reading a book this whole time. He'll be working with the physical therapist on a daily basis.
There's always an element of and more. We talked about Austin or from Luka and his family. And how about Austin going into a contract year where he's going to be one of the most coveted free agents as he's expected to opt out? Now, doesn't Austin have to think about that too? If he tries to be aggressive and come back for the Lakers in time to try to keep them alive in the postseason at maybe endangering himself for further damage on the oblique strain. Is that possible? And of course, wouldn't that affect him in free agency?
So I will put myself into Austin Reeves' head on this one. I think the kind of season that he had, which really was not expected. I mean, he outperformed everybody's expectations. If he did nothing further the rest of this season in the playoffs, he's sitting in the catbird seat in terms of his free agent negotiation. Me being conservative, I would say, why risk future injury for a possible slight increase in what that free agent offers that he's going to demand is going to be? He qualifies for whatever the max is that anybody's willing to spend just on what he's done already up till now this year.
Dr. B, you put yourself in his head. I wish I could put myself in his wallet and make the paychecks that he's going to be making next year. Uh, sadly, the oblique strain is spreading on. We've got another player, Mookie Betts, who has now been placed, according to Dave Roberts, on the 10-day IL with an oblique strain also. And I saw that this comes 2018. He felt an oblique strain. He suffered an oblique strain on the opposite side. What can you tell us about Mookie's injury? Is that basically copy and paste, the same thing that he's dealing with?
Well, it's the same injury. And the guy happens to be in a position where, like Austin Reeves, shortstop, and the batting maneuver, swinging a bat, what could be more rotational than that, except maybe swinging a driver on the golf course. So, yes, it's very synonymous. It's so early in the season that I think the Dodgers are going to play this ultra conservative in terms of how long they keep him out. It's not like they don't have a little bit more talent on the bench to weather the storm here. I don't think you'll see him for 4 to 6 weeks either.
Wow. He was getting off to a good start to the season, and it really sucks because last year Mookie started the season sick and lost so much weight and really gave him a tough start to the year. And now he has this bump on his road to recovery.
That's the way the road to recovery is paved.
Doc, you said it. And when you look at the timeline of both the Lakers and the Dodgers, you kind of alluded to it right there. Very, very contrasting timelines of the end of the season for two of our stars and just the start for one of them.
Well, I think I got an idea who's going to go deeper in their playoffs come end of season between the Lakers and the Dodgers, but I'll keep that to myself.
Oh, I wonder, Doc. I wonder. Well, Doc, thanks again for joining us on this episode of The Road to Recovery. But, Doc, what's going on in Doc in the Dugout?
Doc and Dugout's been busy. This coming week, we've got a Saturday off because the Angels have an early game, but we'll be back raring to go as of the week after, and we've got a full lineup of guests coming for the whole baseball season. So just stay tuned. You'll never fail to be surprised.
Dr. Alan Beyer of the Hoag Orthopedic Institute, thank you very much for joining us on the road to recovery on an action-packed episode on this road to recovery. For Carlos Saisu, this is ESPN LA. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Karlo.